To love one another and accept each other.
To love one another and to serve each other.
We have nothing to lose but our change.
We have nothing to lose but our chains.
We have nothing to lose but our change.
We have nothing to lose but our chains.
U.S. taxes pay their bills.
Israel uses it to kill.
Israel uses it to kill.
U.S. taxes pay their bills.
U.S. taxes pay their bills.
Israel uses it to kill.
Free speech is not a crime.
Drop the charges now. Free speech is not a crime. Drop the charges now. Free speech is not a crime. Drop the charges now. Free speech is not a crime. Drop the charges now. Free speech is not a crime. Drop the charges now. Free speech is not a crime. Drop the charges now. What?
Speech is not a crime.
Hey, what are you doing? What is she doing? What is she doing?
Not a crime. Drop the charges now.
Why are we under arrest?
Drop the charges.
Why are we under arrest?
Free speech is not a crime.
They've explained it to you.
What are we doing wrong? How are we trespassing?
Put your backpacks down, drop out.
Free speech is not a crime.
Drop the charges now.
But he's a student here, though. How's he trespassing?
Free speech is not a crime. Drop the charges now. Free speech is not a crime. Drop the charges now.
Fire on the mountain, run boys run.
Yo, gather round, listen up. I'm about to tell you something.
Fire on the mountain, run boys run.
Let me paint the picture.
We're the largest institution in the state of Minnesota, and we are at such a perfect time to lead by example and to be that change. I personally feel like she cares more about her image and the image of this racist institution before her students.
Don't. Men die. Many men are dying. And many women are dying. Many black women, many black men.
When the crowd rocked up, came to my
You can't do
side.
everything yourself. If you can't snap your fingers, if it's a shared government, and it's ultimately up to the Board of Regents. Why aren't you out here with us? Why aren't you sitting here with us? Why aren't you talking with us? She needs to speak up and tell us that she is here for us. She needs to be sitting here with us, telling the Board of Regents that they need to hear us. We're not going to get tired. We're just going to keep going because Black Lives Matter. And she needs to hear that. So no justice, no peace. Only 14% of those who are sexual assaulted even go to UMPD. That's right. Only 14%. 40% go to Boynton, 40% go to the Aurora Center. So if we're seeing that these are the places that are actually helping students, actually making them feel safe, actually teaching them how to cope with their traumas, then why aren't we funding that?
We need to invest in prevention rather than punishment. When we say defund the police, we're asking to invest in prevention over punishment, healing justice over criminal justice, and public safety that works for everyone, not just the white, wealthy, able-bodied, everyone.
What a Civilian Police Accountability Council is, or Cpac. We're calling it a campus Cpac. It's an elected board of people who are civilians. They're not cops. They have no affiliation to cops. We want student groups who represent black students, who represent POC students, to be on this board, to be able to hire and fire cops, to be able to review all evidence, any cases of misconduct, and do something about it. Taking the power away from administration, taking the power away from people like Joan Gable, and giving it to us, giving it to black students specifically, so that they can control how policing happens on our campus, because we all know that it impacts them the most. When we say disarm UMPD, we want to make sure it happens the way that we want it. We don't want weapons on their daily uniform. We don't want militarized weapons in their storage units that come out whenever there's a peaceful protest. If we leave this shit up to administrators, they will try to water it down as much as possible. We need community control of the police, and we need it now.
Until we make change, nothing is going to happen. So we're going to keep coming out tired, angry, upset.
To tell John
that we don't care if you're uncomfortable. You shouldn't have taken this position if you didn't want to be uncomfortable. We will be back at your house until you address our issues. And we'll be here for another month, and another month after that, and another month after that, and after that. Because we want change, and not just want it, we demand it, and we need it. Thank you.
And I knew I couldn't miss, don't have them, but like, well, I never felt so alive since the fiddle with the devil. Fire on the mountain, run, boys, run.
Hello everyone, my name is Taylor. I'm a member of the Freedom Road Socialist Organization. I'm from Tampa, and I am also a student organizer at the University of South Florida. And thank you all for joining our Students Fight Back, Our Role in the Uprising and Beyond webinar. And we are having this webinar today to talk about the importance of students and their revolutionary potential. And we have 5 wonderful speakers lined up to talk about a variety of topics of why students have revolutionary potential and the importance of students in the revolutionary movement. So, and then we will have a few minutes for Q&A. So if you have any questions, go ahead and put them in the chat, or any questions at any point today, you can put them in the chat. And yeah, so thank you all for joining. And without further ado, we'll start with our first speaker, who is Celia from Minneapolis, and she's going to talk about the kind of historical movement of students in the revolutionary movement. So take it away, Celia.
Hello, everyone. I'm Celia, and I'll begin. Give me just one generation of youth, and I'll transform the whole world, said Vladimir Lenin. Universities are a vital place for revolutionaries to organize because universities are a place with high concentrations of young people, and student organizing plays a strategic role in developing and advancing revolutionary movements and organizing. The history of the Chinese Revolution, the Vietnamese Revolution, and the Vietnamese Revolution and War for National Liberation, and the history of the Progressive Student Network's solidarity campaigns against apartheid in South Africa and U.S. involvement in Central America, and Students for a Democratic Society's current fight against police crimes in the US are all proof that student organizing is not limited to universities or the walls of academia, and that student solidarity and political mass action play a pivotal role in movements for revolution and liberation. Lessons on the role of the student movement can be learned from the Chinese Revolution, as students held actions and organized campaigns to oppose imperialism in China and to better the conditions for the Communist Party of China to be formed and fight for the liberation of the people. In 1919, a student-led and organized May 4th movement played a preliminary role in developing and founding the Communist Party of China by holding mass demonstrations in Beijing, denouncing the growth of Japanese imperialism in China, which was heightened by the Treaty of Versailles and the end of World War I. The May 4th movement promoted the revolutionary concepts of Chinese nationalism and Marxism, and gained the attention of the people and the working class in China, who held support for students and carried out their own actions. Patriotic students once again rose up in 1935 against Japanese imperialism and the collaborationist tendencies of Chiang Kai-shek's government to demand that the Chinese government end its civil war with the Communist Party in order to unite with the Communist Party to combat Japanese invasion and imperialism in China and protect the people and their needs. During the US intervention in the Vietnamese Revolution and War for Independence, students were among the first groups to organize in opposition to the war. And this happened when old SDS organized demonstrations and campaigns against the war in Vietnam and took action to educate the masses against the war by holding teach-ins. Students were successful leaders in the anti-war movement at the time and contributed to the rise of opposition to the war amongst US citizens, and therefore played a critical role in making the war unwinnable for the US government and military. In the 1980s and the 1990s, the Progressive Student Network emerged to stand in solidarity with international movements for liberation and revolution, and acted in opposition to US aggression. Progressive Student Network also demanded and maintained queer rights within their organization and was founded on the 10-year anniversary of the Kent State Massacre. PSN stood in solidarity with the South African people during the fight against apartheid and opposed US involvement in aid to counter-revolutionaries in Nicaragua and El Salvador, and organized to get rid of the CIA and ROTC off of college campuses. Today, in the US, as the Black Lives Matter movement stands strong against police and police crimes, New SDS has been playing its role in a movement with a campaign called Students and Youth Demand Police Accountability, which was launched in the midst of the George Floyd uprising last summer. SDS is a nationwide grassroots action-oriented progressive student and youth organization where all of our decisions, both local and national, are made by on-the-ground organizers who organize at their local college, university, or high schools. And we maintain national organization with an annual convention and regular online meetings. Across the US, SDS chapters have been waging campaigns against local and campus police forces, with some of our chapters demanding a Civilian Police Accountability Council to bring the police forces under the direct control of the communities and people affected by police brutality. As a student organizer at the University of Minnesota Twin Cities, I have seen students show up in the hundreds to various mass actions to hold police accountable for the crimes and demand justice for George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and Dante Wright, and too many others. While the University of Minnesota administration has tried to ignore us or take very weak steps to quell us, and the University of Minnesota police force has shown up in riot gear to scare us into silence, we have yet to see students step back and allow the University of Minnesota Police Department and university administrators to continue their racist, classist operations as usual. And as student organizers and activists, we will not back down until our demands for a Cpac are met. And even then, we will continue to fight and organize for a better future on our campus and stand in solidarity with the working class and oppressed people. Students have always played a conscious role in movements for liberation and revolution. Student solidarity and political action serves to bring attention and awareness to the struggles and movements of the people through the visibility it has served, and has served to spread political consciousness to the masses. Success for student organizing is not linear, as we do not always win our demands and campaigns. However, when students stand in solidarity with working class people and oppressed nationalities and people resisting the US military imperialism and engage in mass line organizing and political action, the movements for liberation and revolution are advanced. So as those of us in SDS say, dare to struggle and dare to win.
Yay, thank you, Celia. That was amazing and it was so informational. So thank you so much again. And once again, that was Celia from Minneapolis. She organizes in the Twin Cities. And next up, we have MJ, who's also a student organizer in Jacksonville, Florida. So take it away, MJ.
Thank you so much for having me. Our struggles are connected. The struggles that students face on campus is a microcosm of our national problems. Institutionalized racism, sexism, homophobia, ableism, wage inequality, lack of health care, disproportionate funding and recruitment to areas in need, symbolic facades followed by no material changes. All of these problems can be traced back to capitalism. We see this both on the local and national scale, as we didn't just organize bail funds and call-ins for our own when they were wrongfully arrested in Jacksonville for peacefully protesting this past summer. We also supported our comrades in Kenosha and the Tally 19 when police started to detain organizers over the summer. We did not stand for that. We basically brought our campus to the streets. We worked with other local organizations like the Northside Coalition, Jacksonville Community Action Committee, and we worked on actions every weekend for a month straight, pretty much. At our largest march, we saw 10,000 people come out, a historic march for Jacksonville, absolutely. They came out for the National Day of Action Against Police Crimes and Racism. Of course, we were thanked by the state, or by the ruling class, with House Bill 1 after that, also known as the anti-protest bill, that threatens the very concept of freedom of speech and assembly. Not to mention, it increases the punishments for people like us who are fighting for actual justice for all people. And it increased protections for those that are against basic human rights. We went all out all year for Black Lives Matter, justice for victims of police crimes, getting a Civilian Police Accountability Council, a people's budget, once again standing firm against HB1. And on our campus, no Nazis at UNF, which we have to do 3 times at our campus. We've done that campaign 3 times so far, since I've been there, since 2017. We, as students, know that our struggles are completely intertwined. The community and the campus are one, physically sometimes even in some cities. So it's really hard to separate the fact that this is our fight too. We are not interested in going back to what was normal. It should have never been normal in the first place to oppress entire nations for centuries. We see the repercussions of that, and it's just not sustainable. We have to choose differently. And I believe we are choosing differently now. I really can see a new wave. We can forge this solidarity together through this collective struggle, through class struggle. Multinational working class unity is absolutely possible. We naturally want our needs to be met. We want to have our existence separate from our profitability. It's not that far different from what most other people want. We definitely have more in common with each other than we do different. And it's really, really important that we hone in on all those similarities. The ruling classes plan over, this whole course, it's truly backfired, as we can see. This has only connected our communities even stronger. I really think that a new wave is coming around, not just because of the physical conditions that we all share together, but because of the class consciousness that will be flowing through us through these social relations that we're forging. We have to forge this through practice, through action. We are fighting for socialism at the end of the day, fighting for our right to exist. And we understand that striking while the iron is hot and continuing to apply that pressure is how we will win. For the masses are the ones that are the real movers of history. Looking through a disciplined lens, we see that these social relations and physical conditions connect our struggle as one. The fight for the multinational working class in a revolutionary way, that's the way to achieve that. Capitalism needs us in order to live, but we by no means need capitalism. We, in fact, must abolish that at its root, which is imperialism. And the way that we do that is through international solidarity. That is a very easy thing to do on college campuses, as usually we have international students and exchange programs. And as we can see, our campus here in Jacksonville alone, we have met our demands for a greater increase of Black and Brown student enrollment. And professors, we are continuing to apply pressure to really work at that. They have been giving us vague answers, but we don't stop at that. We continue to fight. We take action. We are organized. Our enemy is organized, so we must be organized. Working together in an organization for revolutionary change is the most effective way to do that. I strongly urge you to join your local organizations. I've been with SDS for the past 3-4 years. They are out there. Grassroots, multinational working class organizations is where the change is going to happen. And thank you so much. All power to the people.
Thank you, MJ. That was amazing. Yes, definitely it is the masses who are the movers of history, as Mao says, and that is incredibly important. And speaking of Mao, I will also be giving a speech today on the mass line. And, people have talked about the movement for our students in the movement, in the revolutionary movement, particularly in China, but also here in the States. So what do we do with that? And people have talked about the mass line, but what is the mass line? So like I said earlier, my name is Taylor. I'm a student organizer from Tampa, Florida. And I organize with the University of South Florida with Students for a Democratic Society. And let's get into it. What is the mass line? So the mass line is many things, but my favorite way to sum it up is through Mao's quote of "from the masses to the masses." But what does that mean as well? Because it's all kind of, particular language. But essentially, we as communists or Marxist-Leninists use the Marxist theory of knowledge, or practice theory practice to investigate and take the ideas and the needs of the masses, apply our knowledge and theory to those ideas as Marxist-Leninists, and present those ideas back to the masses or the people to better serve their needs. An important aspect of the mass line and something that has been mentioned today is practice, but what is practice? Well, you can also think of it as that one tweet that says fuck around and find out, because that's exactly what it is you just fuck around and you find out. In FRISO, or Freedom Road Socialist Organization, our practice is through our mass organizations and various other means, but primarily we do it through mass organizations or organizations and groups that we organize in that are not explicitly socialist or communist groups, but we organize within to both serve the needs of the people and bring people closer to Marxism-Leninism, because we're not going to get anywhere because, you know, the capitalist machine and propaganda machine is so strong that we're not going to get anywhere just waving the red flag everywhere. But if we use the mass line to bring people closer to Marxism-Leninism, we really are able to make great strides with that. So what mass organizations do we participate in? As people have talked about, we, as students, there's all kinds of mass organizations that we use in FRISO or take part in FRISO, but what we do as students is organize primarily through Students for a Democratic Society or any sister organizations. And there's SDS chapters all across the country at universities, at community colleges, at high school, even high school chapters, which is super cool. And we do this because of the history of SDS and the large role that it played in the anti-war movement against the war in Vietnam, but as well as the progressive role that it plays at universities today. And it allows us to make progressive change and fight for progressive change while bringing students closer to Marxism-Leninism. So now that we know what the mass line is, what practice is, kind of, and what group FRISO students organize within, I'm going to provide a few examples to make the concept a little easier. I'm very example-oriented, so hopefully this will help. So like I said, I organize at the University of South Florida in Tampa, and I've been in SDS for around 3 years, and we've had a few actions and campaigns that have made use of the mass line, but there are a couple that particularly stick out in my mind. So first was last spring, before the end of it all, was at the beginning of the pandemic. And a lot of students were upset about USF not refunding parking tickets because parking passes are really expensive at USF, and not refunding fees related to tuition. So this was like the athletic fee. We couldn't use the gym. That was the distance learning fees. Well, all of our classes are online now, so why do we have to still pay the distance learning fee for online classes? You know, just fees like that where we paid them, but we weren't getting our money's worth of them. And with these kind of scattered ideas, but not really ideas on what to do about it, we as SDS took these ideas and the needs of the students at USF and decided to make a small campaign where the central demand was calling for USF administrators that make hundreds of thousands of dollars to take pay cuts and to refund the students. And as students, you know, our kind of more particular enemy is the administration at our schools. So, and they hoard all of the wealth of our school. So we have to take it back from them. We also have done something similar with our current campaign. So right now we are calling for USF administration to take pay cuts and to defund our campus police department along with along with many other SDS chapters across the country. But we're calling for defunding our campus police department to lessen the blows of the current $36 million in budget cuts. And we're already seeing effects of these budget cuts where class selection is lower, liberal arts, like my department, history, there's less class selection and less resources and higher class volume. So a lot of students at USF have called for an end to these budget cuts, and specifically when the College of Education was actually shut down, USF was trying to shut down an entire major or department due to the budget cuts, and a particularly important one. You know, all of the majority of Hillsborough County, which is where Tampa is, teachers come from USF, but USF was trying to close the College of Education Well, SDS took the demands to not close the College of Education and added that USF should defund the police. They had the same, excuse me, they had the same budgets. Well, the police department actually had a higher budget than the College of Education of over $7 million, whereas the College of Education had $6 million. So we took the ideas of the masses and said, hey, you know, these have the same kind of budgets, similar. Why don't we close or defund the USF Police Department, because USF Police don't do anything to help us. Look at this rising sexual assault cases on campus in the past few years, and look at how they harass Black and brown students. You know, we should just instead close the police department instead of an important major that provides futures to our education. And people took to that. And yes, I'm so sorry. I have no idea what happened. Okay. Whew. Sorry about that, everyone. My Wi-Fi has been really shoddy today, but quick recap, I'm almost finished. The mass line is the way that we take the scattered or many ideas of the masses or the people and making them sharper politically with our knowledge of Marxism-Leninism and with our knowledge through our practice, and then bring those ideas back to the masses. So it is our tool to keep in line with the masses and to truly work for the people and to show that we work for the people and fight for the demands of the people, unlike the bourgeoisie who only fights for their own interests. So it is one of our many tools for revolution. And like I opened, and definitely taking inspiration from NJ, I love the quote of the masses are the movers of history, and that is why we have to connect with them. And so, also, favorite quote from Fred Hampton that SDS uses is dare to struggle, dare to win. So thank you very much. Sorry again about my Wi-Fi. And we're gonna move on to the next speaker, which will be Sharif from also Jacksonville. And he will be talking about transformation and fusion and the importance of that.
Hey everyone, what to do? I am Sharif. Like Taylor said, I'm from Jacksonville, Florida, and I organize here with the University of North Florida Students for a Democratic Society. All right, so I'm going to basically be talking about, you know, as you said, transformation and fusion, but, you know, some of y'all may not even know what that is, and that's okay, 'cause that's what I'm here for. So what is fusion? So basically, we pretty much already know and understand that you know, there's a great divide between the working class and like socialism, right? So what we need to be doing as like revolutionaries, as communists, whatever you want to call call yourself, we need to be fusing the theory of Marxism-Leninism with the working class, right? You know, so that means, you know, we need to be bringing not only just like theory, but also like the leadership to union workers and, you know, working class people in our communities, right? So, you know, we want, you know, no, we need workers to be more conscious of themselves as, you know, part of a class, right? So you're probably thinking, you know, if you're a student, like, what does this have to do with me? Well, so with students, you know, no tea, no shade, you know, you just graduated and you're like, maybe I want to become a professor. You know, that's cute and all, but, you know, that's not what we need, right? We need students who are going to actually go and join like the working class, right? We need like fighters who are going to actually go out there and be on the streets, you know, be in these workplaces, on the shop floor, talking with workers. And again, fusing the idea of Marxism, Leninism with the working class, right? So, you just graduated, you're broke, you're probably living back home with your mama, and that's okay. But a part of accomplishing fusion, it's like what I just said. We need to, join the working class, like get a working class job, join the working class. With this, if we want to see an end to capitalism, I always stress the importance. First of all, Freedom Roll Socialist Organization, we stress the importance of getting a union job, right? If you're not sure, why is a union job? Why union job? So, Taylor just discussed the mass line. Well, unions are a very important mass organization for workers, right? We need to have a fighting labor movement, in order to bring forth of what we want, which is revolution in the United States, which is socialism, right? We want to make sure that workers, have a better life, period. So, sorry, just kind of went on this rant. My mind just went away. So with getting a union job, I kind of always, one of the union jobs, and I work there, is UPS. So UPS, you get this union job, and then, you're doing all this hard work and labor, and you're just like, ugh, this is too much for me. But, it's really fulfilling and really exciting when you're out there talking to working class people and, just helping them with the issues that, that's your boss is trying to send you home early and you need money to survive. So, you fight, fighting back against your boss and management. And, that's just a great feeling. With that, getting a union job, it's about getting involved. So getting involved with the union, learning about the local politics and all that other stuff. But becoming a steward so you can, fight for the working class people. So, that's all a part of organizing and with fusion and stuff like that. That's really important. Now with fusion, I'm not saying you go out there, you go on the shop floor and you just start talking about, socialism this, socialism that, we just talked about the mass line and, there's stuff that happens on the shop floor that you can, use to help, advance people's ideas, So, again, like I just talked about with unions, you're negotiating your wages, your health plan, healthcare, that's really important too, so that's important. But, there's also, think about all the stuff that happens outside of work that we bring into work and talk about. That's where we can really advance people, ideas about certain stuff. So someone is like, I don't know, cops sound good. You're just like, whoa, wait, what about all these people that they just killed and all the Black and brown people that they're killing in the United States? That's, and I'm not saying it's going to be easy because it's not, but that's the part of organizing. You're struggling with people and getting people, meeting people where they're at. That's so important because especially as students, you're thinking, hey, I got all these great ideas and stuff like that, but you have to meet people where they're at because they're not going to be where you're at. So that's what we're here for. So with that, as students, and we talk about getting a union job and stuff like that, we want to transform our unions into class struggle unions. That's not what's happening right now. It's more class collaborationist, where these unions are working with bosses and just kind of throwing the workers under the bus. So, that's why it's important for us to join and get involved with that. Just stress the importance of once you graduate, and again, you sit at your mom's home, and instead of trying to go into being a professor, get a rank and file job, join a union, get involved with the workers and all that good jazz. And then finding the militant minority at your job, right? So the militant minority, these are people who are they're pretty already fired up and stuff like that. You're they already see some of the issues at work, or some might even be class conscious. That's where we come in and we try to bring them in. Again, fuse that theory of Marxism, Leninism with them. So yeah, to end off, it's going to be a conscious effort, and it's going to be a collective effort to organize and, rebuild our fighting unions. It's, like I said, it's not easy, you're going to have to struggle, but, as students, we already have like a lot of advanced ideas, and now it's time to bring those advanced ideas to the working class and fuse the theory of Marxism, Leninism. But yeah, so join Frizzo, join a Freedom Roll Socialist organization, and take up that task of fusion. Period. All right.
Yes, thank you, Sharif. That was so good. That was so important too. We can't just give up on the working class, right? We have to continue, and there's something after college. We're not always going to be in college, so we have to think about the future and what is actually going to get stuff done. It's not really going to be professor or whatever else people do. I don't know what people do, but it's going to be joining the union and joining the struggle. So, and not separating ourselves from the struggle. So thank you again. So next up, we're going to have our last speaker, which is Shane from Denver, and he's going to talk about the importance of starting something kind of from scratch and what that's kind of like, because sometimes you just got to do it. So take it away, Shane.
Hi, everybody. Like Taylor said, my name is Shane, organized with Denver SDS at the University of Colorado, Denver. And yeah, I'm going to talk about a little bit like, you're a young person, you're a student, you consider yourself a Marxist-Leninist, but there's no FRSO near you, there's no SDS at your school maybe. So where do you go from there? How do you start something from nothing? And if I may, I'm going to start off with a Mao quote. It's like my favorite Mao quote. So Mao says, if you want to know the taste of a pear, you must change the pear by eating it yourself. If you want to know the theory and methods of revolution, you must take part in revolution. All genuine knowledge originates in direct experience. So what is Mao talking about there? He's talking about the theory of knowledge, like Taylor was talking about. We're students, we're academics, we all like to sit around and read all the time, but when it comes down to it, you have to go out and do something, and I really can't stress that enough. Taylor was talking about practice theory, practice. That starts with practice, right? So you're on a campus, find some friends and start a chapter of SDS. It can be just a few people. I guarantee you that there's other progressive-minded students, no matter where you are in the country, right? So find some friends, get together and start meeting and, do some investigation, implement the mass line, figure out what are the things that students are upset about. Are they upset about tuition hikes or budget cuts, or do they think there's too big of a police presence on campus? What are the things that you can organize students around? And then what you do is you make a flyer and you go out and you have a demonstration. You buy a megaphone and you go give a speech. And you know what? If nobody shows up to your protest, you give the speech to the grass. It doesn't matter. You get that experience because you know what? Some student's going to walk by and hear what you're saying and it will resonate with them. And then you might have a new person at your next meeting, and then you have one more person to organize with. So that's how it starts. You just have to go out there and do it, And it's not blind practice. Like I said, you have to implement the mass line, learn from your mistakes, summate everything that you do, but it all starts with doing something, That's what we did in Denver, right? So last summer, in the wake of the George Floyd uprising, we figured out that students were unhappy with the police presence on campus. Anybody who goes to the school that I go to can attest that the things that police do pretty much is go around and harass homeless people. That's pretty much all that they do. And they have an obscene budget to do that. So we decided that, we want to start a campaign to disarm and defund the campus police. And 1 year later, we have gotten more people out to SDS events and more people to join and organize with us than we ever had in the past. So that means that we chose a demand that resonates with the student body. And now we're organizing students, and next semester looks really good for our organizing work. And this kind of goes into the idea that the sole criterion of truth is practice. So what this means is, there's a lot of leftists on Twitter who think they have a lot of good ideas, but if you're not organizing, if you're not doing practice, you know nothing. I want to say Fred Hampton says that too, right? That all your theory ain't worth shit if you're not organizing, okay? So the revolution is not going to happen on Twitter, okay? I'm sorry, it's not going to happen there. You have to go out and actually talk to working class people, like Sharif said, undergo transformation, get a union job, but you have to do it, okay? Because you know what? That's the only way that we're going to build a communist party that is truly capable of overthrowing the monstrous system of imperialism that we all live under and that oppresses us all. And, you know, that's the only way we're going to build a future that's worth living for. Because when you get right down to it, for young people, our future, we have a choice. And that choice is socialism or extinction, right? So choose socialism, choose survival, join Freedom Road. Thank you.
Thank you, Shane. That was really amazing. Yeah, and if I may add too, I remember when I first joined Tampa SDS, we were also very small. And I remember being really nervous about going out and doing things like in such a small group, but you really just have to do it. And by doing it, we were able to get scholarships for undocumented students. So, you know, you're not going to get anything done by not doing it. So I really appreciate your speech. So cool. Well, with that, then that is all of our speakers. So give one more round of applause for all of our speakers, our wonderful speakers today. They all did an amazing job. And then now we have a couple questions from the chat. So we're not gonna stay on here for too long, but I'm just gonna ask these questions and then anybody can answer. So the first question that I have here is, as students, do you feel like you have to water down your politics when organizing with liberals? Anyone want to answer?
I guess I can kind of answer it. I'll give something nice, short, and cute. So I don't think it's about watering down your politics. I said it before, but like it's about like meeting people where they're at. So not everyone is going to have all these like raging like ideas of like we need to do X, Y, and Z and stuff like that. You know, you have to just kind of like meet them where they're at and see where they're at, and then organize around that. Organize around what they're struggle. Kind of sometimes you have to struggle with people, but I wouldn't call it watering down. You know, I think it's just meeting people where they're at. I think that's all it is.
Yeah, absolutely. I 100% agree. I don't think it's watering down your politics. I just think it's also understanding that, you know, the propaganda machine is strong. But I think like a lot of people, especially working class people, hate capitalism in some form of another. So I think it's just kind of exactly as Sharif said, which is essentially the mass line, is just meeting people where they're at. And kind of understanding, okay, what does this person hate and what can we unite with, and then what can I push them further on? So I think it's more about thinking strategically about where people are at and how to work around that and how to push their politics to be further to the left. But I wouldn't say it's watering down your politics. And we get to do things like this where we don't have to water down our politics. But I'm gonna let Shane go.
Yeah, I just wanted to add something to that, if I may. We believe people become organizers and people become conscious and class conscious through fighting for their immediate demands, right? So we don't think that, like Sharif was talking about, you know, we don't think that the way that you turn students into revolutionaries is you have an SDS meeting and you start talking about the Soviet Union and Marx, Lenin, and Stalin and all that, you know, like that's not what we believe. We believe that people become revolutionaries through organizing the theory of knowledge, right? So it's not watering down, right? It's uniting on certain demands and learning that way, right? But yeah, uniting with the masses is the most important thing there. And yeah, it's not really watering down. You have to unite with the masses.
Yeah, thank you. All right, let's go with Celia.
Hello, yeah. So kind of going off like meeting people where they're at is also once you meet them where they're at, you have to like hear their demands and take what you can to advance them. So a very practical example of this that we ran into at the University of Minnesota was around the time where it was the March of Our Lives and there was like a lot of gun control talk, we decided to advance that more towards like police accountability. So before we had our community police accountability council demand, we were demanding disarm UMPD, which originated kind of in ties with like the demands for like gun control, and just said like, hey, there's no guns on this campus except for the police force, so let's take the guns from the police.
Yeah, definitely. I think that was perfect. All right, perfect. Then does anyone else have any other answers before we move on to the next question? I think those were all really great answers.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of build off of that. We've all definitely touched upon it already, but just to kind of reiterate that I believe we are all type of like, we naturally have these thoughts that like we know that like this whole system, no matter which one you're talking about, right? Like they're all problematic and corrupt. And that's something that most people can all agree on. Like, oh yeah, this is a big problem that a lot of hands need help on. So exactly, it's just type of gathering up all that help and making, the heavy work lighter.
Yeah, thank you, MJ. Perfect. All right, I think we've heard from everyone. So let's move on to the next question. It seems pretty simple. So what should I start reading if I want to learn more theory? I love this question. I can add something to it. So for me, well, I guess not to plug our own organization on our own webinar, but when you go into Frizzo, a lot of our pamphlets also have further reading. Like I know the Mass Line pamphlet was linked and it's what I used a lot for my speech, but also there's a further reading section at the end of it. So I would say start with maybe some pamphlets or just go in the pamphlets and see what they recommend and go from there. But if anyone has any specific answers too, that's good too.
I have one. Kind of have a few. The titles are just evaporated from my mind. But if you're just getting into theory, I personally do not recommend the Communist Manifesto. I think some people get like really confused with that. So I remember someone tried that with me and I was like, what the hell did I just read? So I always suggest like Stalin, he gives like really, to the point, easy to read stuff. So my mind just went blank on what it's called. Like what is Leninism? I think it's called by Stalin. I highly suggest reading that. That's the only title that I have in my mind. Not saying that you should not read the Communist Manifesto, but if you're just getting into it, I do not recommend. But yeah, so what is Leninism by Stalin? That's for me right now at the top of my head. But don't get all wrapped up in that theory stuff now. We're talking about it. Practice is really important. Make sure you follow it up with practice now.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really hot take. But I also wanted to add, I think Socialism, Utopian, and Scientific is really good by Engels.
I have one. In my opinion, I think like one of the biggest concepts in Leninism that you should learn that will really inform your practice is dialectical materialism. So, which is like the philosophical underpinnings of all this, right? So I think the Dialectical Materialism series by Maurice Cornforth is like the best description of all of that. It's super easy to read, explained very simply. It's the first Marxist theory I ever read, and it really stuck with me. So that's what I would recommend for someone who's just getting into theory.
Yeah, thank you. All right, let's go with Celia.
First and foremost, I think it's like important to be engaged with like organizing, but like when you're organizing and you want to advance your theory, I personally think one of the best combos is On Contradiction and On Practice by Mao Zedong. Yeah, just great readings that like go hand in hand together and just are very practical of like how to organize and lead campaigns.
And I would just add as well, any like speakers that you admire, like reading the transcript of their speeches has really helped me a lot as well. Like Fred Hampton, Malcolm X, MLK, Angela Davis, great place to start as well. Claudia Jones as well.
Yeah, those are all really great answers. And just to add on to this list, this very long list, I'm also going to add for more Stalin, I'm going to say Marxism and the National Question is a must read. And then if you want to follow it up with kind of more particular to the United States, Black Bolshevik by Harry Haywood is really good too, which is online with not a great PDF, but we got to make do with what we got. But we're going to move on to the next question. Thank you all for your really great answers. So going back to Sharif's speech about transformation and fusion, it's a question saying, aren't unions full of reformists? Anyone can answer.
Yeah, I'll start off since I kind of talked about that. So with reformists, I'm not sure if you mean exactly like people or like the people who's in charge. But yeah, that's definitely a case, but I don't think just because something's full of reformists, you don't stop the organizing, especially like Marxist Leninists, or like we continue to go out there and we do what we do. This is what I say, like if we're talking about like, the bureaucrats and stuff. The main contradiction right now is between the workers and the capitalists, right? So I think that's what the main focus of when you're organizing is going to be about, is kind of like getting people to understand the problem, working class people don't even consider themselves as part of like this class, right? So I think that's the main focus of like even trying to get them to understand that, fusion. And, with the reformists, if you think about it, like once you start organizing people and you start like getting into, you become steward and all this other stuff. I mean, me personally, as they'll shoot away in the end. Or like, they're going to be in the back end while, you have all these workers, fighting and demanding the stuff that they're like rightfully owed, a living wage, freaking healthcare. Those are the two top things on my mind right now. But, yeah, so it's full of reformists, but, are we going to let that stop us? No, we're going to continue to go out there, organize on the shop floor, stuff like that. But yeah, if anyone else want to answer, they can too. That's kind of like what's on the top of my brain.
Yeah, I have something I could add. If we only organize in organizations that were full of revolutionaries, we'd just be organizing with ourselves and we would never, ever get anywhere. We'd never change the world, ever. It would never happen, right? So yeah, there's reformists, but, I would argue that the masses of people, well, I'm not even arguing it's a fact, right? The masses of people aren't revolutionary. So we still have to organize inside those organizations, though, especially organizations like unions that are the most organized section of the working class. And there's millions of union members in the US, so you can't ignore that the organizing potential of all those workers.
Right, 100%. I also would like to add that, as Marxist-Leninists, we can't just like retreat from from struggles or from adversity. Like we have to continue to fight, even if it's not like easy. So even if unions are full of reformists and, we have to deal with trade union bureaucrats and corrupt officials, like in the Teamsters Union currently there was HAPA, but we have to fight back against that and do what we can to win what we can, right? We should win all that can be won. And if we just sit around and say, well, I don't want to organize in a union, I would rather be a professor and like reach my students or something like that, that's not really getting really anywhere. I think it's more important to join the struggle, be a part of the working class, be a part of the union and part of the class struggle, rather than just turning away from it because it seems too hard or because it seems like a lost cause. It's not a lost cause, right? If you're willing to put in the work into it, then, and you, along with so many other revolutionary people willing to put in the work into organizing within a union, we can make a lot of wins. Sorry, also facilitating, but does anyone have anything else they want to add? All right, cool. Okay, that was a good question. So we have one more question, and then I think we're going to cut it off because it's starting to get close to 7. We're running around an hour. So how do you give good speeches?
I love this question. This is a great question. This was exactly what I was thinking as well when I first joined. I was like, oh no, I've always been back in the class, don't talk to me. If I raise my hand, my heart is racing, I don't think I can do that. But that was probably one of the first things I said, I'm down to help with anything. I don't know if I can speak. And here I am years later. Someone asked me to speak, oh yeah, sure. Let's do it. It really it sounds cliche. It gets easier the more you do it. You just kind of have to get out there and get started with it, honestly. What's really helped me, like I said earlier, is watching speakers that I admire. Whether you have local ones, like local organizers that you admire, whether that's people that you want to watch and kind of you watch them for their passion, how they command a crowd and things like that. You could also ask your peers, hey, I'm thinking about giving the speech, or do you want to come with me to this event? I was asked to speak. Can you look at this? Or, organizers are always down to help each other out and look at each other's speeches and such. So definitely just ask for help. I think that's where theory comes into play a lot as well. It's a lot easier to talk about something if you know what you're talking about, of course. So yeah, definitely. But just, you got to get started. And of course, it's going to be a little nerve-wracking at first, but you have that support. You absolutely have, that solidarity.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely agree. Go ahead, Sharif.
So I am particularly not a person who gives good speeches just because my brain is mesh. But my advice for giving a good speech, just from what I know of other people, something that we did with UNFSCS, we kind of listen to each other's speeches and we kind of analyze it, pick it a little, and that helps with you're probably ooh, I don't want nobody to pick my speech, but that actually just gives you kind of a sense of what does and doesn't work. Anytime I feel I actually given a good speech personally myself, it's because I'm usually pissed the hell off, and I'm just kind of going off the whim, and just giving it my all. So I think usually it's like MJ said, once you're kind of it, you're familiar with it. Also, you're really passionate. 9 times 10, you're gonna give a good speech. Especially if you got all people all riled up talking about woo, yeah. So you're probably giving a good speech. You don't even know it. Another thing that I was gonna say is that a lot of people that I know who are really great speakers, they actually watch or listen to other speakers of revolutionaries. Right, so they listen to Fred Hampton's speech, Malcolm X, and then they, that helps them with their speaking. So if you're worried about giving a great speech or not, I highly suggest that. Just like MJ said, get in with one of your peers and be like, hey, do you think this works? And if it don't work, that's okay. You just got to change it.
Yeah, definitely. If I may add too, I think people get scared of giving a bad speech because we want to be perfect all the time. I know I'm exactly like that. Even today I was like, oh my gosh, this has to be the most perfect webinar ever. But that doesn't happen, right? We don't do anything perfectly because we're humans, first of all, and also because nothing is perfect. There's always things that we can do to improve, and we just have to learn from our mistakes. And I think that's a very important aspect of practice theory practice, like people were saying, is we summate our mistakes and we summate the good stuff too. But so if your speech isn't perfect the first time, then that means next time is going to be even better. And I also think that like I get really pumped watching Fred Hampton speak or other revolutionary speakers, but after watching him speak, I really love, like, I'm like, rally right now, right here, let's go. In my apartment. But also don't be afraid to like maybe write your speech if you have to, because I think there's a lot of pressure to be able to ad-lib a speech, especially when watching all of these like speakers, and it puts a lot of pressure. But you know, it's okay to prepare. I personally write all of my speeches. I'm trying to get better about not doing that, but also it's okay too, because if you're prepared and the politics are good, then I think that's incredibly important too. But I hate watching speakers who are just like, they're not interacting and they don't seem like they care about the topic. So I also think that no matter what you're saying, as long as you seem passionate and you're engaged, I think that also makes for a really good speech. All right, cool. Does anyone have anything else they want to add? It's the last question. Get in your last thoughts. That's okay. Okay. All right, cool. Then that's the end of the questionnaire or Q&A section. And then we're going to have some closing remarks also by me. So thank you all for watching the live stream about the role of students in the revolutionary movement. And after watching this, I hope you've become inspired to be more involved if you aren't already. So here are some things coming up. As we've mentioned throughout this webinar, that we organize within SDS, or Students for Democratic Society. And currently, Students for Democratic Society has a national campaign to defund and disband campus police departments and against police brutality on our campuses and in our communities. So we've taken up this campaign after a long year. Well, we took it up last summer, but after a long year of calling for justice for George Floyd and so many other victims of police crimes, particularly in our local communities. And this is also why we're having a National Day of Action on May 25th. So this is a perfect time to, if you don't have an SDS chapter around you, this is a perfect time to kind of take up this action and maybe have your own rally or make flyers and stuff like that. You could do anything. So, but it's on May 25th to demand justice for George Floyd, max sentencing for Chauvin, Derek Chauvin, the murderer of George Floyd, convictions of the three other killer cops involved in George Floyd's murder, and justice for all other victims of police brutality. So that's what SDS has coming up. We also have a national call every other Sunday at 8:30 EST. And there's usually Facebook events for those. So, but yeah, we're all across the country, or you can start something yourself, as you heard today. It's hard work, but that's our job as revolutionaries, our responsibility as revolutionaries is doing the hard work, because, you know, we are fighting for a better future, and the bourgeoisie is not just going to give it to us, right? So we have to fight for it. And as Mal says, revolution is not a dinner party. So, so we have to continue the fight and do the hard work, but it'll be worth it in the end. So either way, whether you have something near you or you don't, you can go to frizzo.org/join to sign up for Frizzo if you're interested, which I hope you are. We're a great org. And we're also on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and now Twitch, which is super cool. So thanks again for joining, and we hope to see you in the streets. So all power to the people.